Hi friends, I'm Tati. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my December wrap-up. The month of December, last month of the year. I was on a quest to read 100 books by the end of the year. So my original goal for 2020 was 30 books, which I quickly surpassed. I think it was maybe around June that I passed 30 books, and I obviously just kept reading. And some point in December, around mid-December probably, around the time that I was finishing finals, I had already reached 90 something books. So it became my life's mission in those last 2 weeks to read as much as I could, because I just really wanted to get to 100 books. I'd never read 100 books before in 1 year, I don't think. And I don't know, it was just something I wanted to do. I like nice, round, even numbers. So I was on that quest and I managed it. I finished 100 books by the end of the year, literally at the last second, as per usual with me. So that means in order to do that, I read 13 books in the month of December. So we're gonna go through them now. It's a very mixed bag of books. There's literally no cohesion here, except for the fact that towards the end of the year, there were a lot of 5 stars, because I read some really great books. So here we go. Technically, at the beginning of the month, I wasn't supposed to read anything because I was working on my finals. But that first like 3 or 4 days of December, I gave myself a pass. And so I was finishing up some books and I read some new books, but they were all like, they took me like a day or two, so it was fine. There's like a very clear break between the time that I was like not really reading because I was dealing with school stuff, and then all the time that I did spend reading because I was done with school stuff. Anyway, I've rambled on and on twice already, so let's just get started. So the first book that I finished in December was Bloom by Kevin Panetta and Savannah Ganesha. This is a graphic novel that I picked up at my local bookstore, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. This is an LGBT graphic novel. It is about this boy, Ari, who doesn't really want to work at his family's bakery, but then he meets Hector, who just moved to Ari's town, and so Hector loves to bake, and so Ari gets him a job at the bakery. Then tragedy ensues, and it is the whole story of what happens and what happens to their relationship. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars because it was good, but I didn't love it. And the reason I didn't love it was mainly because of Ari. Ari is 18 in the novel, and he is a whiny bitch. There's no other way of saying it. He's very whiny. He's one of those 18-year-olds that's just like, I'm 18, I'm an adult, I can do whatever the fuck I want. And I'm like, no, you can't, because you don't support yourself. Your parents still do, so back that shit up. And so I found him to be a very whiny character, and he didn't take responsibility for his actions, and it was just not great. I didn't really jive with Ari, honestly, and Ari does not deserve Hector, because Hector is a sweet baby boy and way better than Ari could ever be or deserve. So there's that. Next book that I finished in December was Dora Bruce by Sierra Simone, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. This was an anticipated read for me. The day it showed up on my Kindle on November 30th, I started it immediately, and holy hell, it was good. Just like with any other book in this series, I don't know how to talk about it, but I will do my best. I cried at the end of this book. There were legitimate tears coming out of my eyes while I was reading. Some parts of this book were so sad that, again, crying at the end of the book. But it also has a really happy resolution, which I was very happy about. The plot thread that has bugged me since the end of the second book was resolved in this, which I was very happy about. I got a lot of Auden POV in this, which I'm really glad Sierra Simone decided to save Auden's POV for the final book. Dora Bruce's is mostly told from Auden's perspective. It still intersperses the other characters' perspectives throughout the novel, but it's mostly Auden. And I kind of love that she saved it for the very end, because Auden is an angsty, dramatic bisexual, and I love that he just like explodes the moment that he like gets on the page, and I love him. He is a dramatic king and I love him. Anyway, this entire series was a wild ride. It was great. The smut in this was also awesome, just like in Harvest of Sighs. So really no complaints from me. This was a 5 out of 5 stars. It was good. It was really, really good. And I'm gonna move on now. I think this is the most coherently I've talked about this series since I started reading it in June. So, growth. The third book I read in December is an old favorite on this channel. I've reread it several times in the year of 2020, and like several people were reading it on my Twitter timeline, and that meant that I had to reread it as well. And that book is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Are we surprised? No, we're not. Anyway, nobody's gonna be surprised by this. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Of course I did. It's my favorite book. Anyway, Lord help me. This was my 5th reading of this book, I believe. Let's check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, I've read this 5 times. Am I ashamed by that? No. No, not at all. This book continues to be fantastic. I continue to love it. Yes, I listened to it on audio again because I was at work and I needed something to cheer me up. Life is great when I'm reading this. So there you go. Do I have new thoughts on this book? Probably not, but I still enjoy reading it. The character development, still exquisite. The character growth, the character relationships, still perfect. How they're built, excellent. Seeing Alex slowly fall in love and understand himself better because of it. Oh my god, I die. It's great. I love it every time. Put that shoot that shit into my veins. Truly, no new thoughts about this book. It's just fantastic. Will I also probably reread it 3 more times in 2021? What do you think? Of course I am. What the hell are we talking about? Yes, I will continue to reread this all the time because it is great and I love it and I can do that. I mean, I own 4 fucking copies of this book. Of course I'm gonna reread it again and again and again and again and again until I die. It is what it is. Goodbye. 4th book that I finished in December was The Hostage Bargain by Anika Martin. We all make mistakes. I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. It was trash and not in the good way. So once I finished Dora Bruce's and was done with Thornchapel as a whole, I felt a void in my heart and I needed something to replace that. And I had heard, I don't know if it was through the group chat or through Twitter or through somewhere, that this was also poly and it was smutty, and it was this girl who gets kidnapped by bank robbers and then she just decides to stay with them. And I was like, this sounds wild, right up my alley. And so I picked it up. I read it super quickly, I do have to say, but it was absolute wholesale trash and not in the good way. It was just the thought process of all the people involved in this book was ridiculous. It made no sense. It was just, this book was ridiculous to the point that like it was asking too much of my suspension of disbelief. The logic in this is non-existent, and also the smut was not that great. After, you know, coming off of Thornchapel, this was just like, it did not deliver the way I wanted it to, and so here we are 2 stars later. The next 2 that I read, I'm gonna talk about quickly because I've already talked about them, and they were King Lear by William Shakespeare and Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. Both of them were for university. I reread them because I was writing my final papers on them for my Shakespeare class and for my crime lit class, so I decided to reread them in order to have them fresh in my mind in order to write these papers. I really have no new thoughts to share with you about those 2 books, so I think we can just move on. The 7th book that I finished in December was The Afterlife of Holly Chase by Cynthia Hand. This was recommended by Sammy and Skylar. I saw that they both loved it, so I decided to read it. And it was on Scribd, so I was able to listen to the audiobook while I was at work, which is one of my favorite things to do. And so here we are. The book was actually really, really good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It centers around this girl, Holly Chase, who becomes a modern day Scrooge. And so the book kind of centers around the Christmas Carol story and how this company picks a Scrooge every year and tries to get them to change their ways, and so on and so forth. And so Holly gets visited by 3 ghosts, but she does not change her ways and she dies, and the book picks up from there on, and it is about her afterlife. It was actually really good. One of the things that I truly loved about this book was the character growth in it. Holly goes through a whole 180-degree change. She changes her life, her way of thinking, her behavior. The character growth and progression in this book was absolutely excellent. One of the things that I wasn't a fan of though was hand waving, basically, that the book does in order to not explain how the Scrooge project fully works. It doesn't explain the magic behind it. It just basically, everything gets chucked up to like, oh, it's just magic, and like it's just hand waved away, which I didn't really love. I want an explanation as to how it all works, but the book really doesn't give you that. And the other thing that I really didn't like, bit of a spoiler alert here, is that it is well documented that I don't enjoy resurrection tropes, and there is a resurrection at the end of the book, which I don't really love. I don't love resurrection, so yeah, it's just not my thing. If you're gonna die, stay dead. All in all, the book was actually really good. The writing was excellent, and the character growth, perfection. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. And next book that I finished in December was Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This was my first Brandon Sanderson, and it all comes from the fact that my friend Skylar said in one of her recent videos at that time that she had started reading Brandon Sanderson this year and she'd fallen in love with the Cosmere world, and none of her friends really read it, and so I decided that I needed to change that, and so I used my Audible credit that month, and I got Warbreaker and I listened to it basically in 2 sittings, and it was so good. It was so good. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I am in love with this book. I loved it. It was so good. This was my first adult fantasy, and holy shit, I was so... I don't think I can talk coherently about it because I loved it so much. It was so good. The magic system was so amazing. It revolves around colors and breath, and it was so good. It was just... it was complex, but it was so easily understandable once you got the hang of it, and holy, I was just... Anyway, the character work was exquisite. It was so good. There were so many characters, but once I like met all the players, it was really easy to keep track of them. And oh, I don't even know how to talk about this book coherently. Oh my god, I'm gonna try. All the characters have really great character development. I didn't feel like any single character was underdeveloped or didn't get enough attention paid to, at least like the main players that we're supposed to be paying attention to. I love that the book drives home a really strong message of not judging a book by its cover, and like not judging people based on like second or third hand information, but like judging them for who they are actually and like what they present themselves as and like their actions. I loved that so much. I thought it was a great message, and it was done so well throughout the entire book. And also another thing that I loved was that all of these characters who were separated throughout the kingdom were all sort of working towards the same goal without really knowing it, and it is because they are all unknowingly working towards the same goal that all of the pieces fit together so perfectly, and that in the end they can achieve it because they were all an integral part of having this goal met. And it was just done so well, and so many characters have to face their own biases in this book. Holy shit, I could talk about this book for so long, but I won't right now. But ooh, it was so good. It was so good. I am so glad that I decided to read it, and I am looking forward to continuing to read more Brandon Sanderson. The 9th book that I read in December was Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. Clockwork Princess. Okay, I read this for our monthly Shadowhunters live show. The link will be somewhere up there or somewhere down below. I don't know. It'll be linked somewhere. Clockwork Princess. This was a wild ride. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. And off the bat, this book was way too long. There's a lot of Will Herondale just riding through the country to try to get to Tessa. And like most of that could have been cut out and the book would still make an equal amount of sense. And also the book was boring. Like, it was boring. Nobody gives a shit about the plot of this book. All we care about are the relationships between the characters. So here's the thing. This book is meant to explain a lot of the ways in which the clave behaves in the mortal instruments. And I get that. But I think, and I said this in the live show, that a more productive and more interesting way of doing that would have been to make the entire Infernal Devices series more of a clave political drama rather than about an end of the world, shadow hunters are gonna get wiped out kind of thing. Because it feels the same as the Mortal Instruments, because it's the same threat. Sebastian and Mortmain are super interchangeable, with the exception that like Mortmain is mortal and not a shadow hunter. His only like thing is that he was raised by warlocks, while Sebastian is a shadow hunter. It's the only difference between them, but they both like want to wipe out the shadow hunters and whatnot. So really, I think if they'd made this a clave political drama, it would have been so much more interesting than what we actually got, which is like, I don't even know what we got, because the plot of this entire series makes no sense, because literally nobody is here for the plot of this series. We're all just here for the love triangle between Will, Jem, and Tessa, which should have never been a love triangle in the first place. Anyway, that's besides the point. The book was boring. It really only picked up in the last couple chapters. I did cry, but that I did cry because it was sad at the end. But it, you know, the last couple chapters were really sad. Anyway, as the finale for this series, it was fine, but it has its strengths and weaknesses. But I think this series as a whole could have been so much better in so many ways that just were missed opportunity, because the Infernal Devices feels like the Mortal Instruments, except that the Mortal Instruments is twice as long. After being done with Clockwork Princess, this is really where I ramped up my reading, because we was gonna get to 100. The 10th book that I read in December was We Unleash the Merciless Storm by Taylor Kimahia. Holy fucking shit, that was so good! Okay, this was a 5 out of 5. I listened to the audiobook because I was still working and doing shit, and I just needed something that was hands-free, okay? But I really wanted to read this book before the end of the year, because I read the first one in June, and I was not gonna let this go into 2021 unread. Also, thing I realized, if I'm gonna read a series, a duology, a trilogy, what were you? I need to read it like quick. No wonder I've made 3 accidental binge series videos, because I need to do this quickly, because otherwise I start reading and I forget the entire thing that happened in the previous book. When I started reading this, I was like, wait, what happened in the first book? Because I don't remember. But I looked up a synopsis, and then just went back to reading. This was so fucking good. This was told from Carmen's perspective. The first one was told from Donnie's perspective. And holy shit, Carmen fills in all the missing information from the first book. Like all the information that Donnie and the reader don't have, Carmen fills it in this book. Carmen also saves Donnie like a badass, but also Donnie kind of also saves herself, because she is also a badass. I love this book, okay? Leave me alone. We love girlfriends opposing the government. Love to see it. I also love to see the progression of Donnie and Carmen's relationship, how they grew more confident and more certain with each other, continued to get to know each other, and decided we're gonna take our husband down. Loved it. Loved every single part of it, and I loved the open ending of the book. I really did, because it leaves space for imagination. You can imagine what happens next. The author doesn't tell you, but it also leaves space for more books, which I wouldn't be opposed to. Anyway, oh, I've said this before and I will continue to say it again. Blend of English and Spanish. Oh, so good. So good. Love it. Please continue to do that. Also, I liked this one better than the first one. The first one was really good. Don't get me wrong. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, but this one though, oh, so good. Like, so good. This was really fucking good and I loved it. Okay, I'm gonna move on now. The 11th book that I read in December was With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. 5 out of 5 stars. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I trust this woman with my life. Did not know what this book was about going in or when I bought it, because I trust Elizabeth Acevedo. Whatever she writes, I will read it and I will say thank you. And I read this because it's one of those things, like, I discovered Elizabeth Acevedo's writing this year and I decided that I couldn't go into 2021 without having read all 3 of her books. So here we are, and it was so good. Okay, I'm gonna try to be coherent about this. I'm gonna fail. Anyway, okay. Did not disappoint. Didn't know what I was looking for when I went into this book, but it didn't disappoint, whatever that was. I love the book. I loved that it was written in vignettes. I loved it so much, especially because I love when books use different forms or when they use different mediums. Y'all know I love the Illuminae files, and I love this because it was written in tiny vignettes that all had to do with the story, even though some of them weren't directly like talking about what was happening in the plot. You were just getting more information about Imani or like Baby Girl or like Malachi or like everybody. You were just getting more info and like deeper background, but it's still related to the plot of the story. And also the fact that it's written in vignettes keeps the story really moving, because the vignettes are short, specific, so they give you all the information that you need without meandering and straying from the plot as it would in like a normally written novel in like specific chapters and whatever, that you have more space to meander. Vignettes are usually short and sweet, so it keeps everything moving and at a great pace. So this was excellent. The characters in this were beautifully nuanced and three-dimensional. I don't think I've ever read a book that centers around a teen mom. I might be wrong about that, but I also might be right about that. I'm not sure. But this centers around a teen mom, and the way Acevedo treats the characters in this book is amazing. Imani never shies away from the fact that these are decisions that she made and that she screwed up. Imani is also treated with a lot of kindness on the author's part, and I love that. I loved it. She was treated with kindness and with understanding, but also acknowledging that these are choices that were made and choices that Imani herself made, and that she has stuck by them the entire time. The book has recipes for each of the 3 parts, which are so funny and incredible and sound so yummy. This book centers a lot around cooking, and it was fantastic. I said it in the last book, I'll say it again, blend of English and Spanish. Say it with me, perfection. Please do more of it. It was so good. I loved it. It was just great. I don't know what else to tell you. It was just a really good book. And also, it's a really pretty book, because like when you remove the dust jacket, look, it's shiny and there's fruit. Holy shit. Yeah, no, this book is beautiful. Elizabeth Acevedo is my queen. She can continue to write whatever she wants, and I will read it. The 12th book that I read in December was Suggested Reading by Dave Connors. I actually ended up listening to this on audio because I was busy, and listening to it on audio, hands-free. Anyway, I love this book, 5 out of 5 stars. It is a book about books, which I am a sucker for. I know not a lot of people like that, but I love it. It was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's about this girl who goes to a private school in Tennessee, and the private school starts banning specific books, especially books that are very important to the main character, Clara. So Clara decides to stash all these books in her locker and give them white covers, and she basically starts the Unlib, which is the Unlibrary, and she loans them out to people, and so she gets a lot of her classmates reading, and the story progresses from there. I really loved this book. I didn't love some of the books that were mentioned as being like pivotal to Clara's life. I am not a fan of Catcher in the Rye, but that is also a very subjective thing. I understand that, so I really didn't deduct stars or anything like that because of it, because everybody has different reactions to different books, which is a topic that's actually handled within suggested reading. One of the things that I loved about this book was that the main character, Clara, really struggles with the things that she is doing, running this unlibrary, and how the books that she's giving to people are affecting their lives. Events happening that are clearly affecting the students' lives based on the books that they are reading. And so she really wrestles with that, and I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I listened to this on audio, but I will probably more likely than not reread it very soon, and will read my physical copy, because I really love the book, and I think that the audio experience is very different from the physical experience, especially in this book, because kind of like with The Fire on High, it's also written in vignettes, and I would like to experience this in its physical form, and I would also really like the opportunity to tab and highlight and fully annotate this book. So you might see it back on my currently reading shelf on Goodreads sooner rather than later. Especially because I love a reread. Love a reread. I mean, I've reread Red, White, and Royal Blue 4 times. Clearly not afraid of a reread. Okay, so for my 13th and final book of 2020, I was looking for something that was quick, short, and will get us to the finish line, especially because, like I said, always at the end, coming in at the last second, photo finish. And so I decided to pick up Ellas, Historias de Mujeres Puertorriqueñas. It is an illustrated book. See, it has beautiful illustrations, and the book is about stories of important women throughout Puerto Rican history that are not paid enough attention to. And something I didn't know when I went into this book is that it is bilingual, meaning that the stories are written in both Spanish and English, which I fully loved. One of my goals for 2021 is to read more books in Spanish, so I decided that this was the best way to end the year, looking forward towards the new year. And some of the parts I read in Spanish, some of them I read in English, just because like I read faster in English. And so when the day was coming to an end and I needed to go spend the night with my family, it was just easier to read it in English because I would get through it faster than sitting down to read it in Spanish. So I really did a combo of the two. I loved that it was written in both English and Spanish because it made the reading experience just that much better. I also really liked that the stories in this don't really focus a lot on the biographical details, but rather focus on like what is the important things that they contributed to Puerto Rican history. So I absolutely love that. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. It was a great read. Fully recommend to anyone that wants to learn more about Puerto Rico and the incredible women that make up our history. So that is it. Those were the 13 books that I read in December. It was a very long list. I really went through it in December. When I decided to reach 100, I was just like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do. And it was great. I loved that I had time to read this much. And I don't know, it was just a great way to close out the year, and I am so excited for 2021 and all the things that may come with it. This is where I leave you. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Come yell at me in the comments. Be sure to support your local indie bookstore. I've been Tati, and I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye!